Greetings everyone, Rajee Narinesingh here, transgender activist, author, spiritualist, actress, show host, reality TV personality, and outreach advocate for Trans Social, a trans-led, trans-focused organization. So I'm coming to you from my very humble home here in South Florida, USA, and for those of you who are actually listening to me on a video and not just an audio, you can see that my very humble home doesn't look so humble with this beautiful screen behind me. Shout out to @LondonBoy on Instagram. He hooked me up for my birthday. I love this screen. Oh my gosh, so beautiful. So today I want to talk about the power of a moment in time. Yes, a moment in time. Crossing paths with someone just for a moment and how that can oftentimes transcend in your life. So for me, I would say one of the earliest memories of something like this is me around 10 years old, growing up in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I was in the Mount Airy section of Philadelphia, and everyone from Mount Airy knows Wadsworth Avenue. The library is there, there's a number of stores, a pizza place, and so I used to like to go to get pizza. Well, I still love pizza, y'all. And at that time, it was like $1.50 and you got a slice of pizza and a soda. And so my mom would let me go sometimes, and this particular day I went up, had my pizza, my soda, and I'm leaving, and I forget to take my hat because it was like the end of winter going into spring. I get about half a block down the street and I remember. So I go back to get my hat and there's a group of guys, probably like 4 or 5 of them. And I'm like 10 years old. They were probably 15, 16. And before I know it, we're out in the middle of Wadsworth Avenue. They surrounded me. They're throwing my hat back and forth. I'm pleading for my hat. And they're calling me names and laughing at me. I start crying. And out of the blue, this grown man, probably in his like 20s or 30s, comes out of nowhere. And he goes over to the guy and he snatches the hat out of his hand. And he says, if you want to mess with someone your own size. And he's cussing them out. They scatter and run off. So he walks over to me and he looks in my eyes and he says, here's your hat. And he starts walking with me and I'm still crying and upset. And he's trying to encourage me not to let this thing get me down. And, you know, we go about 3 blocks and he says, listen, if you need me to walk you all the way home, I will. And I said, no, I think I'll be fine from here. And he told me to take care of myself. And, you know, I never saw that guy again. But that experience has stayed with me. And I'm not going to tell you how old I am because you never ask a lady how old she is. But let's say I've been around the block a few times. And all these years, it has stayed with me. And, you know, what's just so beautiful about that experience to me is the humanity. And in that moment when I really needed someone to have my back, it was him, and he did it. And so I would say another experience would be that really stands out is I'm just getting out of high school, about 18, 19 years old, and I'm in Center City, Philadelphia. That's the downtown area of Philly. It's bustling, lots of people, cars. So I'm waiting to cross the street, waiting for the flashing light, you know, that means walk, you can go. And it's a crowd of us waiting. And the light changes, we get the signal that we can walk across safely. And there's a lady next to me, and when we start walking, she starts talking. And she says to me, you know, I want you to know that you are just absolutely beautiful. And she says, not just physically. She says, you're beautiful physically, but she says, your spirit is so beautiful. And she says, do not let anyone like rain on your parade. Take your shine. And she really tries to encourage me. It was a quick conversation. And when we get to the other side of the street, she looks at me and she says, "You take care of yourself and you keep shining bright." And I thanked her, and that was it. We went our separate ways. Now, at this time in my life, I'm feeling really not stable in the world, trying to find myself, my identity, and where I fit in, and just not confident really. And I think probably these people were seeing that in me, and they were able to see my light, but I wasn't fully seeing it. And so, that was just so perfect for me, that message at a time when I really needed to hear something like that. And it just, encouraged me to keep going. Not too long after that, I go to a party. It was thrown by some organization in Philly. And I walk in, and it's like everyone stopped. And they're staring at me. And like the energy was really awkward. People were whispering, and some people were like laughing. And then after a while, people went back to what they were doing. I went and got something to drink, and I kind of went off to a corner, and I'm just standing there. And all of a sudden, a woman walks up to me, and she says, "Honey, you have it." She says, "You have what I call the X factor." She says, "Not only are you beautiful," and at that time, the way I would describe myself was, back then they would say, "Oh, that's a pretty boy." And that's pretty much how I could describe to you all. I was pretty stylish and had the pretty boy look. I think they still say that sometimes, but there was also the femininity thing there. And so she says to me, "You have this X factor." She says, "I had it at one time." Now I'm like 18, 19. She's probably in her late 40s at this time. And she's telling me, it is not a curse. She says, "I used to look at it like it was a bit of a curse." She says, "But it is a gift." And she says, "I want you to know that." And she says, "You use it while you have it, because it is a gift for your life." And never saw that woman again. But in that moment, that awkward moment, walking into a party and people staring and laughing and talking shit, excuse my French, but I needed to hear that. Helped me to keep going. So maybe around 20, I think I was about that age, 19, 20. So not too long after that, my uncle comes over from Trinidad to visit. He's on vacation, and he says, "Well, we're going to go to New York." He says, "For the day, we're going to sightsee." So it was my uncle, my sister, my cousin, and myself. We go to the Empire State Building. We do the whole tourist thing. And then, around lunchtime, we stopped at this Chinese restaurant, small, tiny Chinese restaurant, to get some lunch. So we're all sitting at the table eating, and there was an old Chinese man sitting at the next table. And, he was probably like in his 70s maybe. And all of a sudden, he looks up and he looks over at me and he says, "I want to tell you something." And I'm like a deer in headlights. I'm like, oh my God, because it came out of left field. He says, "Try not to worry yourself about the small stuff in life, things that aren't really important in the scheme of things, He said, "Look around this restaurant. In 100 years, everyone in this restaurant will not be on the earthly plane anymore, would have transitioned." He says, and I mean, come on, maybe one person lives to 100, 101, but I got what he was saying. And he says, even a baby born today in 100 years will probably not be here anymore. So he says, try to enjoy the moments in life and not get yourself consumed with worry over the small stuff that's in the scope of life really doesn't have, any great importance. And so, I'm like young, and even in that moment, I felt the profoundness of it. But as I've lived my life, that moment for me has become even more profound. Just such a spiritually profound moment. So, of course, I never saw this guy again. We were visiting New York, busy city, just for the day, some random Chinese restaurant, and he specifically directed the message to me. He wasn't looking at anyone else at the table. He was looking at me in my eyes. And so, what a message to give someone, especially, someone kind of starting out in life. I'm 19, 20 years old. And like I said, that message now, as I've lived life, so spiritually profound. So, in recent years with my notoriety, I can think of a particular experience where I was traveling out to California to film. I'm in an airport terminal, and I'm on my phone, and I just look up and I see this old white lady shuffling over towards me. And I was like wondering, is she coming towards me? And then I saw she was looking at me. And so I smile and she looks at me and she says, sorry to bother you, but I know who you are. I recognize you. And she says, I want to tell you that you've been an inspiration to my life. In that moment, I got chills all over my body. Because this woman, her life and my life are probably worlds apart. A white American woman, she seemed like she might have been from the Midwest, different generation, probably late 70s, early 80s. And she's telling me that something about me and my life has inspired her. Oh my God, that's priceless. That's priceless. And I looked at her and I said, thank you so much. And to think that she was having difficulty walking and she shuffled over and she was just determined to tell me that, to let me know that. And, busy airport, we're all going our own different destinations, and that moment is just so precious to me. A few years ago, I had a colonoscopy. Shout out to Holy Cross Hospital in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, USA. Really great. Because I always get nervous as a trans woman when I go to different places, because I'm scared, if they're not going to treat me very well, or how the treatment that I'm going to get. I'm always have anxiety about that. So, for the most part, the staff there has been great. There was one nurse, but that's a whole other video. I'm not even going to get into that. But for the most part, it was a great experience. And I had my colonoscopy. I'm laying in recovery, and the doctor comes in. He gives me a clean bill of health. He didn't find anything. Everything looks great. And he says, you relax here, because the anesthesia was still wearing off. So I'm laying there and I'm feeling very happy and blessed for getting a clean bill of health. And then I hear another doctor walk in, and he's talking to the lady, the other lady that was in recovery. And I overhear that they found something and it looks like it might be cancer. And he's going through the whole thing of what's going to have to happen next. And, my heart kind of dropped for her. I felt for her. And so anyway, the nurse comes and tells me, you can get dressed now, and you're ready to leave. You're all set. So I get my clothes on and I'm grabbing my bag and I'm walking out. And as I'm walking out, our eyes meet. Like the lady looks at me and I look at her. And the look on that woman's face, I mean, it was like so many different emotions. Emotions of being afraid, fear, and sadness, and uncertainty. And just like the look was, oh my God, like I'll never forget that look. And we didn't say anything to each other. But I think about that lady from time to time. I don't know if she's still here or if she ended up transitioning. I think about that moment, and there were no words exchanged, but our energy interacted with each other, and we looked in each other's eyes, and I could feel her emotions, and that has stayed with me, because it could have very well been the other way around. She could have been the one that was getting the clean bill of health, and I'd be the one that, they're telling that they think they found cancer. And so I didn't take that for granted. It was a moment where I was very grateful, and I felt humble. I felt that, and it was an affirmation that this life is truly a journey, and at any given time, you don't necessarily know what you will be facing. So a lot of things, but, an example of like no words exchanged, but we were in passing and our energies connected. And, the look on her face and us looking into each other's eyes, the windows to our soul. So I wanted to share these few experiences with you all today, because we human beings have this ability to connect with each other in very profound ways, in ways that transcend time and space, in eternal ways. And so there's a power. Just those moments can be so powerful, and I encourage you all to think about the moments in your life that have impacted you, and relish them, and give thanks for them, because these different experiences have helped me on my journey as I've journeyed through my lifetime. And so on that note, I just want to wish everyone love, happiness, peace, good health, prosperity, and many wonderful blessings.